Hello and welcome to another episode of Color Your Life. I'm Max and today I have a very special album for you. Our little daughter had her first day at school last summer and this album is dedicated to that special day. So first I will walk you through the album and the tutorial will follow right away. To make it a little bit easier to jump around in this vid, I will put an index in the description right below here. But let's get started now. As you've already seen in the preview, the album has the shape of an old school bag. It is 10 by 10 inches and is composed of a completely colorful mixture of various papers. The inside of the front cover has no flap combinations this time, but only a bigger picture frame. I cut the white frame freehand and put some acetate behind it. But here comes the first page. In the center we have two small flaps which are closed with magnets. On the insides I changed the order of the papers so that the pockets are not obvious at first sight, unless there's something in them. The flap part itself is mounted onto a larger flap that again covers another one. Here is enough space also for photos in larger formats. And also in this page we have large photo mats between the pages. Likewise, all other pages, they are sewn with a zigzag stitch. Small butterflies form the tabs of the photo mats this time, along the side of the album. And here is the second page. It is quite simple with only two flaps in different sizes. The first is attached with a magnet, while the second one is closed with a flower-shaped brad that serves as a swing closure. On the third page I once again tried some pocket variations. These pockets are decorated with an edge punch in the shape of a train. Inside we have small tags that are stitched again and have first-grade line paper on the back. And here again a closer look at the pocket wells. The closure of this page is a small clip on a braided ribbon. Underneath, the flaps can be opened to the left and right and again offer space for larger pictures. And here again a big photo mat. The eye catcher on the fourth page is a closure made of baker's twine. After opening, you can unfold the flaps in all four directions. But now we come to my favorite page. It is actually made of leftovers, which I have merged in a kind of camera lens. All parts are again held by a magnet which is incorporated in the round circle in the center. And here again a big photo mat in the side. On page 6 an oversized tag is held behind two small belly bands. Of course, this tag is stitched as well. The belly bands are split in the middle and are acting as magnetic closures to hold all subsequent pages together. These then have no further closure techniques and are simple flaps. All in all, a lot of room for tons of photos and greeting cards that our little one received for school enrollment. On page 7, a square flap is held by a magnet in the center of the page. This time the right side opens upwards, forming a contrast to the large flap on the left. For the back on the bottom, I did not do any separate text this time, as this is an ideal place to collect the greeting cards or other stuff. And once again, a big photo mat. Page 8 is a little bit more complex again, but let's start with the little tags in the pockets. They are easy to pull out and I did the edges with some label dies. The two small flaps again have a magnetic closure and can be opened to the right side. But of course, the larger flap on the side reveals even more space. It can be opened as well to the left and right, thus giving space once again in full size of a base page. And here is the favorite of our daughter. She loves balloons, and that's why I conjured a few for her. They either can take photos or accompanying text on the back. Underneath is a medium-size photo mat in a pipe pocket. But you may want to know how the balloons are kept on the page. Well, the magic is called magnets again. The magnets in the balloons and those on the page automatically find each other when you move the balloons over it. And as you can see, they are rock solid holding on the page. Well, and of course, there's a photo mat in between again. Page number 10 is just a gimmick with geometric forms. I thought it might be good to give the flaps a slightly different shape here. And so the edges of the flaps under the squares have a zigzag shape. Underneath we have another large page with a pocket again, in which various small parts can be collected. And here we come to the last double page. The 3 small flaps on the left side are held together by a satin ribbon. And again, it was the perfect situation to use the loads of leftover scraps. The small flap on the right side is at the same time the closure of the larger flap underneath. And of course, there is also a big photo mat in the last page. This last one is a little bit more complex. Here we have a folded card in a small belly band. And right next to it, a mini photo mat in a pocket. And here just a closer look that even the smaller parts are all stitched. And here again, a smaller and a larger flap can be opened to the left and the right. But even more, the base can be folded down as well. Just like on the inside of the front cover, there is no separate flap combination on the back as well. And that's because I thought the paper was simply too pretty to cover. And so I created a pocket out of acetate. And intricate butterfly die cuts on the top perfectly integrate with the background paper. Since this piece is open at the top and closed at the bottom, images, cards, or other small things can be inserted here. Incidentally, the closure is also entirely made out of paper. The cardstock I used has only a leather print on it, but as you can see, it looks deceptively real. Well, and here's the nostalgic satchel. So, now I have to say goodbye to all of you who are only interested in the album. Thank you so much for watching and hopefully see you next time again. Bye bye! Oh! You want to stay and see the magic that I used to put everything together? Well then, off we go! The base pages are made of a 10 by 20 inch cardstock, which I fold in the center and close at the sides with a separate adhesive flap. And I have already attached it to one side. So let's go in the same order as we have just seen the pages. You will see the measurements in inch right next to the pieces. However, just let me point out that my work mat has a grid in centimeters. But let's start with the magnetic closures. First I'm attaching the magnets on one side with roll adhesive and tape. Afterwards I'm rubbing some roll adhesive to create a small glue dot and use it on the counter magnet on the other side. These counter magnets are again fixed with tape and then covered with design paper. A little bit of liquid glue helps to adhere the tape to the design paper. I'm first eyeballing the pockets to the left before I'm fixing them with roll adhesive. If you do not intend to sew your pages like I do, then you should adhere all parts a little bit more carefully than I do here. Well, I can only say that sewing the pages is definitely not necessary, but I just like it and I feel it makes a huge difference to the overall look of the pages. The remaining parts here are simply adhered without any other special features. Well, and here comes the magnet on the back and then off we go to the sewing machine. I'm cutting all paper parts so that they are slightly smaller than the cardstock pieces. As you may have noticed, I'm working a lot with roll adhesive, and there is a special reason for this. If you want to transfer magnets from one flap to the other, You can first fix them with roll adhesive and then peel them off again within the first 5 minutes. Afterwards, it will become more and more permanent, but until then, it's really flexible. If you are also intending to sew your pages, you have to pay attention to the order of when to do what. In this video, you will always see a blackout when I'm quickly running to the sewing machine. But unfortunately, it's not always possible to sew everything together. And so I have to use glue from time to time for certain pieces. Here, for example, the double cardstock would be much too thick for the sewing machine. A thick needle may make it, but the stitch is often disrupted when the material is too thick. And so I'm sewing the whole thing just on the upper part and stick it onto the base page by using liquid glue. Now that you have seen how the magnets are fixed on the page, here is a method how to make a closure without a magnet. I'm taking a brad in the shape of a flower and using it as rotating swing closure. Once the brad has been put through, I'm cutting its wings and cover them with a piece of paper. This will allow the brad to rotate and not interfere with the photo mat that will be inside the page. If you are also sewing your pages, please note that the seams on the inside should be masked with tape. By this, they will not be destroyed by the seams of the photo mats, which will be rubbing against them later on. Covered with tape, they will be long-lasting and the photo mats will slide very smoothly. And when everything is done, the page can be closed. Next, here are the instructions for the small welt pockets. I already measured the slits and marked them with a pencil. And now I'm cutting them approximately 1/8 of an inch wide before I'm adhering the design paper. And you want to make sure that the slots are very well covered with glue before adhering the design paper. It simply doesn't matter which border punches you are using. I am here showing you 2 different punches so that you can see that the process is always the same. You should always measure directly at the slots so that there are no nasty surprises once you want to insert the pieces. It only needs a small adhesive flap on the left and on the right. The paper in the slots will now be cut along the top edge and the sides of the slot by using a craft knife. The lower edge is only scored and later folded inwards. And now we can insert the punched border pieces from the top. On the back, I'm now adhering the small piece of design paper together with the punched border pieces. To hamper the tags to fall into the page, I always like to build a pocket bag. For this I'm using plain white copy paper, which I'm cutting by eyeballing the size. And then I'm adhering it to the bottom of the inserted punched border pieces and on top of the slot. That does not have to be very neat because nobody will ever see it. The lower pocket does not need a bag, and so we can close the whole piece. The other flap is a simple one again. Oh God, if only I would not always forget the liquid glue on the tape. And here again, something simple. Here the flaps are simply adhered to all four sides of the page. For the closure, I'm using some eyelets and tie it all up with baker's twine. Finally, all seams are taped on the inside again and the page is closed with liquid glue. Oh, this one looks really complicated, but I promise it's really easy. I'm marking each side at a third and the center point. Then I'm using a big lid and connect the marks on the outside with the center. And now each piece is decorated with paper scraps. After sewing, I'm reassembling the entire camera lens and adhering two pieces to each side of the page. And for the center you can use almost everything. I've decided to take a scalloped circle die for the cardstock together with a plain circle die for the design paper and put craft foam between them. And the magnet can be wonderfully hidden within the craft foam. Now I'm only adhering the circle to one part and then we can already glue and sew the base page. Well, here I could have set the magnets before, but I simply forgot, and so I have to adhere them now. And another page is done. If you want to put smaller flaps on a larger one without cutting the design paper into pieces, you will need to cut a slot again, being approximately 1/8 of an inch wide. You should leave some of the design paper on the left and right when cutting the inside of the slot. The edges of the slot must again well be glued so that nothing separates later on. The design paper pieces I'm simply folding backwards so that the small edges are nice and clean. Did you ever wonder what to do with all the loose ends of the threads? Well, that's very easy and simple. I'm just adhering small die cuts or punched pieces right on top of the loose ends and cut off the excess, so they are safe and do not fiddle around everywhere. The small flap is now simply pushed through the slot and adhered to the back. If you do not have a piece of cardstock that is so wide, you can always use two pieces and glue them together with an adhesive flap. With these big pockets on the bottom of a page, you should always remember to stick the adhesive flaps of the pockets around the design paper of the base page. The pocket itself will then be stitched at the bottom and on both sides, just along with the base page. Because this part can be opened to both sides, we need an extra hinge at the back as adhesive flap. I'm attaching this to the middle part of the cardstock piece. The closure here follows all principles of a standard flap. Setting the magnet, adhering the design paper, and then sewing the edges. I've been doing this for so long now that it's not really hard for me to keep track of the magnets. However, if you are having trouble with that, it's often helpful to think about them in advance and mark them on the pieces. And this piece we will need twice, and off again to the sewing machine. How to create a slot and how to cover it, you meanwhile know. But here is a way to make the slot look like a pocket in a garment. You will need 2 strips of cardstock, which are approximately ½ an inch wider to the left and the right than the slot itself. Cutting will be done on the white lines. And now insert and adhere it exactly as you can see here. And again, cover all seams nicely, because here too a photo mat will be pulled and pushed in and out afterwards. And now we come to the magic of the balloons. Actually, it's not very magical if you know how to do it. I'm simply poking through the balloons and the page with a paper piercer. But please, do not be too euphoric. Just a little mark. This small hole in the balloons can easily be closed again by rubbing over them with a bone folder. And then a magnet is placed on this very spot. When all balloons are done, I'm setting the counter magnets. And that's pretty easy too, because the little holes are helping here as well. The actual procedure remains the same with the roll adhesive and the tape. And as you can see here, the magnets are finding each other when sliding the balloons over the page. Actually, there's nothing special about this page. You simply have to find the right dimensions to get a decent staircase look. I, for example, sketched this on ordinary copy paper first and then transferred it. The lower squares will be glued together, preferably at the point where the ends of the threads are. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but seems to be only logical, as we anyway have to cover the threads. Even if you don't see it, I put a magnet in the bottom corner of the top square just before sewing. But unfortunately I forgot the counter magnet on the lower two squares. Nevertheless, this gives me the opportunity to show you another possibility to set the magnet. It's also possible to set the counter magnet on top of the pieces and covering it with a paper flower. Small parts are always useful if there are masses of leftover pieces from the large pages. And I can assure you that especially with an album size of 10 by 10 inch, you are creating lots of scrap pieces. And so I usually use them on pages like this one. In order to open the small flap a little bit easier, I'm adhering a small piece of ribbon on the edge before sewing around it. Also, the large closure is made out of satin ribbon that is fixed with roll adhesive and later held by the seams. And here too, I put the counter magnet on top and covered it with a paper flower. And so, here's the last page. By now, you already know all the features and how to build them. But let's recap what we've just done so far. First of all, creating a belly band. Well, that's super easy. Next, setting the magnets. I think this is also not a problem anymore. And then temporarily adhere the flaps and position the counter magnets. Ha! A breeze! And then, using leftover pieces cleverly. I think we don't even have to mention this. And, of course, putting flaps everywhere where you would not expect them. Well, I guess that's a piece of cake now. But unfortunately, the pages alone do not build up a complete album. And so, let's take a look at the cover and the binding. I'm using cardboard here that is slightly less than 1/8 of an inch thick, and I'm connecting the pieces with duct tape. You want to keep a gap between them that is twice as wide as the cardboard is thick. The cardstock with the leathery look is unfortunately not wide enough. And since the lid has also to be covered as well, I'm just adhering another piece onto the first one. To preserve the leathery look, I sewed them along the edge using white sewable twine. For the top flap, I'm using vegan leather. Oh my god, what the heck is vegan leather again? Well, no worries, this is available in various forms on the market, and you may already know it as grunge paper, stone paper or snap pep. It doesn't matter which to use, the essential thing is that it is flexible and almost indestructible. I'm adhering it about 1 inch onto the back of the cover. Then I'm folding it over using liquid glue and immediately rolling it up. This brings the lid into a round shape. While the piece is still wet, you can press it very well into shape. So no panic, you have plenty of time. While the whole thing is drying, I have already stitched the cardstock with the white sewable twine, and now I'm adhering it to the cardboard. I'm using matte medium gel for this, since I simply got the best results so far with it. Once it has dried a little bit, I'm folding the front over before going on with the spine. By doing so, there is enough cardstock around the folds and I'm avoiding it to break along this line. For the closures, I got some old belts from the dollar store and I'm now cutting out the buckles. I'm using grunge paper again for the new belts, wrapping them in cardstock and again stitching them with twine. And I think they are looking deceptively like real leather belts. The white edges of the cardstock are simply darkened with a brown marker. Finally, I'm punching the holes and done is the closure. And of course, we need another one. Next, I'm gluing them down evenly onto the lid and pressing them firmly using some big clamps from the hardware store. As soon as this is dry, the counterparts have to be adhered, and then I'm letting the whole thing dry very well. Since the closures will be heavily used, we need to reinforce them using some brads again. So I'm drilling a few holes with my scissors through the straps and the cover, and then inserting 2 brads. Then I'm spreading their wings on the back and flattening them with a hammer. A single brad will be sufficient for the top straps, and then the inside of the lid can be closed. And now to the hinge system on the inside of the spine. I prefer a gap between the pages of approximately 3/4 of an inch. And for the sake of simplicity, the hinges are 3/4 of an inch as well. To bring the hinges together, I'm usually using double-sided tape on the top of one side and on the bottom of the other. Once this is done, I'm cutting off the ends diagonally to allow the pages to slide on much easier. And then I'm adhering the entire part very well to the inside of the spine using liquid glue again. Then the insides of the front and back cover can be covered with design paper. And I'm using the cut-offs of these for the gaps between the hinges. Well, and finally the pages can be inserted. I always play it safe and use double-sided tape on the upper edges of the hinges and liquid glue on the lower edge of the pages. By this, the pages are first held up by the tape until the liquid glue on the lower part is dry. Well, and a proper satchel of course needs carrier belts. And on the top I glued these with liquid glue and reinforced them with a brad again. On the bottom I only glued them down with liquid glue because the loads are less strong here. Well folks, and that's it for today. I hope you had fun and got inspired. And if you did, then please like, comment and share this video. And if this is your first time here at Color Your Life, then I would love to have you subscribe. And if you additionally click that little bell, you will be immediately notified as soon as a new video is uploaded. And if you like more inspiration, then I have here and here some other proposals for you. Just click on the vids to play them right away. Well, then there is nothing more to say than thank you so much for watching and hope to catch you next time again. Bye bye!